Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Circle Up and Get Real, where we talk about things that matter with people who matter. And as always, I love having conversations. It's probably one of the things I love more than anything is dialogue, where we agree to suspend previous assumptions in order to learn from and with each other. And I love doing that in person, of course. Second best is virtual, live. And close third in that area is this podcast when people will watch live or later and add comments because at least we can have an exchange of ideas, and maybe in some cases the exchange of ideas that happens with a podcast or a Facebook Live or something like that gives us a little bit more removed opportunity to think and ponder before we respond in a way that we might not have if we were together in person. That's one thing to consider. And then one thing that when I said that, it made me think about how rare that seems to be online when people create fake profiles and then just respond really fast and don't really think before they type. So there's a couple of ways to think about that. I love doing this podcast. This is episode number 302. We're coming up on season 7. We're completing season 6. And while I don't know if other people are actually listening or watching, and thank you to those current viewers who are here. Thank you for being here. I can see that in my figures right here on the screen. I don't know that I do what I do on this podcast for the likes and clicks. I really don't. And as I say that, the viewership goes down. It's funny to watch that. This is not why I do what I do. What I'm learning over the 6 years of this podcast is I get better at allowing my thoughts to come out and through me. And it's fun to allow those emergent thoughts to, for me, not to censor them so much. And so that's what I've learned over these 6 seasons. And today I want to talk about the soft versus hard skills dilemma. And I've been in the space of what have traditionally been called soft skill development for most of my career. My major in college was English and communications. My favorite class that I can remember was an evening class, a Wednesday evening class on business ethics. And we sat in a circle and we talked about the right thing to do in business. And I will never forget that class. I played basketball in college, and there were times we had games on Wednesdays. That it was a Wednesday evening class. And if we had a game that went from 5:30 to 7:30, let's say, or 5 to 7 or something like that, I couldn't wait to get done with my game so I could get to that class because I love dialogue. I love deep thinking. And it's somewhat rare that people are willing to suspend their previous assumptions in order to learn. And when it happens, it's one of the joys of my life. I really, really love that. So today I want to talk about hard and soft and how we might be able to rethink how that shows up at work. And the impetus for this conversation kind of comes from this book. I'm holding it up if you're watching on video. It's called The Soft Edge, Where Great Companies Find Lasting Success. And it's not a new book. It was written in 2014, so it's not new. It's by Rich Karlgaard, who I put in the notes here, his bio. He's the Forbes publisher, entrepreneur, investor, and board director. And I have an actual autographed copy of this book because Rich spoke at TEDx Fargo a couple of years ago. And he's from North Dakota. I've always found that to be really interesting, how he became the Forbes editor. Not that good things don't come from North Dakota, don't hear me in that way, but it's always fun to see how a small state like ours can actually produce people who have pretty lofty titles. And so I wanted to think about the distinction that he has between hard and soft skills and whether that's related to masculine and feminine energy. So those are my thoughts today. And I'll just tell you the distinction that Rich talks about in his book between what he calls the hard edge and the soft edge. The hard edge are things like capital efficiency, logistics, supply chain, cost, speed. We all know that if we're running a business, those are really important things to consider. And I won't go into all the details of the book, but there's another way to think of things. And he calls it the soft edge, which is expression of your deepest values. And he says this is the most misunderstood side of business. And he says in 2014, it's underfunded and neglected in too many companies. And part of the problem with that, and I've noticed this my whole career, is it's really difficult to measure the results of things that you might consider to be soft. So that's harder to measure. And because it's harder to measure, it's more difficult to attach an ROI. And that's what most people want for their investment. What is the return on this investment? And so that's difficult. But here's how he describes soft edge. It's things like trust, smarts, teams, taste, and story. And so he goes into those in this book. And like I said, I won't get into the details, but that book was so interesting to me when it came out, and it's been on my shelf. I've read it before. That does not change. It hasn't gone to the shelf and stayed on the shelf. This kind of awareness, I think, is more important now than ever to recognize those distinctions. So I'm very curious because most of my career has been spent in male dominated industries. I've worked a lot in manufacturing. And I mean, when I think about any kind of leadership I've been part of, it's been male leadership. I played basketball in college and in high school and never had a female coach. I sang in a chorus for ever and ever for more than 20 years, 25 years, never had a female director. So all of the things that I've been most interested in doing outside of work have involved male leaders in my experience. I'm trying to think to my work experience. I don't think I've ever had a female role model. It's all been males. My very first boss out of college was a male, and if I think about it now, all of the influences I've had have been male. So when I look at that as male characteristics, and I'll change it so it's not men and women always, it's going to be masculine and feminine energies as I'm exploring this today. I see that I see that a lot, and I'm noticing those kinds of things a lot recently. So masculine energy is when it's overextended. When masculine energy is overextended, it shows up as control, certainty, decisiveness, things that business has traditionally rewarded. And I say overextended because if we use it too much, we forget that there's another side. We use the hard skills more. We forget that there's another way to harmonize. So again, masculine energy overextended can be performance, pressure, drive, pushing through things, forcing, making things happen, winning, fixing, proving, all of these things that have been effective in business over a long time when you think about it. I've also finished the book, The Fourth Turning is Here, and I think there's a correlation somehow in how we historically have been successful in business ventures. And some of those are masculine energies. And I'm not disparaging that at all. In fact, in my experience with mostly men who have more masculine energy, it's been effective in the ways we measure effectiveness, right? Control, certainty, decisiveness, performance pressure, forcing, making, pushing, winning, proving, all of those things have been effective. On the other side, feminine energy has, in historic terms, been undervalued. Rich says that in his book. These are things like intuition, connection, awareness, collaboration, sensing, reflection. They're important, but they're forgotten in some cases because it's hard to measure the ROI. So again, this isn't about men and women, male and female. This is about energy. Because when feminine, sorry, I see it's hard to not do that, but feminine energy, underdeveloped or distorted, can show up as uncomfortable emotion or taking things too personally or reacting in an emotional way. And I'm thinking about this in terms of emotional reactions to statements made even in social media and taking things personally and then turning it into a fight, which is evident everywhere you turn. So I'm curious, and again, this is not necessarily about a lecture, but it's about what I'm wondering and pondering about. And one thing I'm really thinking about related to hard and soft skill development is what happens when decisiveness, which we see as being a positive male trait when it's used well, what happens when decisiveness has no awareness? So if it's tunnel focused on the outcome without the awareness of what is happening around it, what's the effect? I think of this as something I learned in a personal development course I took many years ago. I used to see myself, I used to be this way, not even see myself. I used to be this way. I was very goal driven. I was a college All American basketball player. I made goals and achieved them because it's what you do. You say you're going to do something and you do it. And once I had an opportunity to take a look at my own self, it turns out that I was kind of like a dinosaur going through my life, achieving goals and forgetting I had a big tail behind me that was wiping people out. I could give you many examples of that. And I thought, why doesn't everyone want to achieve the things I want to achieve? All of you should see this. Everybody should be as focused and driven as I am. And in my now looking back, of course, we can always connect the dots looking back, that had tinges of perfectionism. And that was where I got stuck as a kid. Everything needed to be perfect. I needed to be perfect. Actually, I didn't, if I remember correctly, I didn't really think everybody else should be perfect. I would be upset if they did things better than I did because I was supposed to be perfect. And I was supposed to be number one at everything. And again, I don't know where this came from. Firstborn, I don't know. But I was so driven to do things right or correctly or whatever that I had no awareness of anything outside of that. If you have been a friend of mine in high school, grade school, you know this about me. And even early in my career, I just didn't understand that people wouldn't see the world the same way I did. And so I recognize that business typically has rewarded those kinds of behaviors. Athletics did, right? We reward the people who win. We don't reward the people who lose and learn. Because if I remember my basketball career, I think back on it, I learned way more from the games we lost than the games we won. I'll never forget, even now, thinking about going to the state tournament as a senior in high school, going into the state tournament 21 and 0. 21 and 0. I mean, my gosh. But coming out 22 and 2 because we lost our first game of the season in the second round of the state tournament. And we Hope, I could go back. Hope was the name of the time. Hope, North Dakota. They beat us and they were good. They were really good. And we were then 20, what would it have been? 21 and 1? 22 and 1. We lost that first game. And then the fourth place game didn't seem to matter. At least to me, I thought, well, who's going to remember third and fourth? 40 some years later, I remember third and fourth. I wish I would have tried harder in that third place game, but because it wasn't the championship, I think I just lost some of my mojo because who remembers third and fourth? They only remember the winner. And it was all about the winning for me. And even now, I remember that game. I remember things that I've learned from that. And the thing about making a mistake or losing a game or doing something like that, it's never a failure unless you don't learn from it. And so learning that there's more than just that narrow focus of achievement that wipes people and things out behind me. That's so different. Bruce, perfection assures survival, acceptance, approval, and safety from the family and societal clan. Right, Bruce. Perfection assures survival, acceptance, approval, and safety from the family and societal clan. So, but perfection in itself, Bruce, is impossible. So the achievement or the striving for perfection is one thing, which I'm starting to adjust in my own understanding of things now, from perfection, which is unachievable, to excellence, which I can experience as I learn from the mistakes. You say, then comes high achievement to be seen and get more approval. So it's a cycle in that way you've just described it, Bruce. Perfection is like, I'm never going to be good enough, so I have to keep trying and keep seeking for that approval from people outside. It's, and inside, it could be hollow. It could be like, I'm not feeding this hole in my soul because I'm looking for approval from people outside. And I think that's what I'm going to say masculine energy has been conditioned to do. Again, not men and women. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the masculine energy that would have us seek for perfection. And that is a push and a drive. It's not wrong or right. It's not good or bad. I'm going to talk a little bit more here about effective. Um, does it achieve what we want to achieve, or does it wipe more people out? And that's something to consider. So, to your point, Bruce, about what I've started to notice in real life settings, especially in work settings, because all of us, most of us, have ways to make a living. Um, Somehow we've had jobs at some point, and what many of those environments have reinforced over years and time is certainty over curiosity, right? We know what to do. Don't question us. We, the leaders or whoever, are in this environment that rewards certainty over curiosity, that rewards speed over reflection. Don't question what we tell you to do. Just do it. In the old days, older days, it used to be we didn't hire you for your brain. We hired you for your brawn. So just do the work. I was in manufacturing for so many years, and not that that's what it was in this, not that long ago time, but that's the tradition, right? The tradition of manufacturing historically, if you look back. So the old way of looking at this masculine driven kind of culture and environment was that people ended up managing energy instead of doing meaningful work. So you'd have to manage your energy, manage your ideas, manage your. Hey, I'm speaking for myself again. Put my ideas and curiosity in a box because it wasn't rewarded in that way. We don't want that from you. I had to learn how to box up my square corners or cut off my square corners so I could fit into the round hole. And my square corners were what made me me. But it didn't seem like that's what people wanted in work settings. They wanted you to do what they told you to do and what they hired you to do. And so that was rewarded then. And I think what's starting to happen in 2014 when this book was written by Rich Karlgaard, The Soft Edge, what he started to understand, I think, and I'm going to go to men and women now, but men who trust intuition, men who know how to show empathy without without apology, without being like, I want to show you my heart, and I don't want to have to feel like I have to apologize for that. Men especially, who can learn how to listen without feeling the need to fix things. That's going to emerge, if it hasn't already, in leadership characteristics. And those are more feminine. Those are more feminine energy. That isn't soft, according to Rich. This is what it means to be advanced in your understanding and your leadership. And again, this is not like giving up something for something else. This is expanding. And so I'm thinking about not even calling it hard skills or soft skills, because each implies something that we don't necessarily mean to imply. So what if it's not harder or softer, but we can learn how to integrate these skills, these hard and soft skills? So women, then, if you think about women who have typically been more emotional, more feeling, we've called that touchy-feely, we've called that a bunch of things that are negative. I coach women and have who, and I'm going to tell you, I've even coached some men who have this emotional side to them, and women feel like they're wrong and men feel like they have to apologize. So it's like I feel things, I'm empathetic, and that's not welcome in the workplace. And so there's this like expectation that somebody somewhere should be different than they are. There's this un when I ask about it, it's like they're unable to articulate what the should is and where the should comes from. Like who decided what is right, wrong, good, bad. It's so interesting because then we have, instead of invitation to bring yourself and what you're thinking and your best thinking, your best work, your best awareness, it can create friction and things that don't flow smoothly because we are overthinking. Can I say this? Can I offer this idea? Or do I have to shut my mouth? Am I high enough on the totem pole that I have the ability and the right to say something? Oh, let me look around and see whether I've earned the right to share my idea. These are things I work through with my coaching clients right now in the present time. So I'm curious about where all of us seem to have to give away our actual power that's inside of us so that we fit in better. And it's still happening today, even though we're starting to shine a light on some of these things. So in the Fourth Turning book, which is a historical reflection on how the world changes and turns through what they call seculums, 80 to 100-year periods of time looking back. We're in a fourth turning right now, which is like the winter. It's a crisis, according to the way it's articulated in the book. The fourth turning is here. Then strong and decisive energy tends to rise because it's what we need sometimes to get through things. And at some point, there is we can't sit around and go, let's have a conversation about this and let's talk it through. Sometimes in crises, we need to move. We need to use motivation instead of always inviting invitation, or sorry, inspiration. So we need to be aware of some of these distinctions. Bruce says, observation, masculine lack of awareness serves a purpose. Feminine lack of awareness serves a purpose. Both are the fires that burn through the old brush and forests to allow for the next seedlings to have a clean field and fertilizer to take root and flourish. It's built into the cycles of nature on our planet. I think what I'm hearing, masculine and feminine energy. So there's lack of awareness and then there's awareness, Bruce. So masculine lack of awareness serves a purpose and feminine lack of awareness serves a purpose, and both burn through old brush and forests to have a clean field and fertilizer to take root and flourish. Then maybe that's where the masculine awareness and the feminine awareness have a place to emerge. And I love that. I love that way of thinking of that. Because if we don't learn about integration, it's always going to be one against the other. One's better, one's worse. And so integrating both of these awarenesses, both of these ways of being, both of these energetic, I'm going to say what, beingnesses, energetic beingnesses. In times of crisis, then, as I said earlier, if we don't understand that that works during crisis, that we're burning things down, we need to run, go through, but overused and over time, that same energy will burn people out. So it becomes rigid and like this is the way it's always done, this is the way we've always done it. And that push force energy that seems to have been needed during the crisis can burn things down. And maybe that's good, Bruce, but maybe in some ways nature would have a different way of doing things than we think we need to do them. So we just need to redefine some of these things, redefine hard and soft, redefine some of the ways we've been doing things in the past that have gotten us through. And maybe there's a way of, listening differently, being more aware. So what does this look like? What does this look like now in our awareness wherever you are, in your work, in whatever you're up to in your life, in your communities, in your organizations. It might be from moving from feeling the need to prove and convince and force and make and fix to understanding, listening first. I call it noticing, noticing without the need to prove, without the need to, I'm trying to think of other ways to say that. Convince. People convinced against their will are of the same opinion still. And sometimes we nod our heads because we're like, whatever, fine. And the loudest voice tends to win out. But it's not the best necessarily. So if we could own what we're sensing, what we're feeling, what we're intuiting, what we're being inspired to understand in a way that we feel safe to share, I wonder if integration would have more of a place. Bruce says extremes are not good. Buddha says follow the middle path. Right. Extremes are just that. They're extreme. And if you even think of it as a pendulum swinging, it's going to go from way here to way here, and it's going to settle at some point. And if we can allow that middle ground not to be, I'm sitting on a fence and I'm not picking a side, and if we could look at it both ways, look and be aware and say, there's a way to integrate these energies we're talking about. The masculine and feminine have to have definite advantages. And if we can look at both of those and integrate them, I just really believe that's where our awareness can allow us to move in a more what's a better word to say? A more better isn't the right word right here. I'm not coming up with a word to say that. More effective, maybe a more effective action. More effective action. How about that? So it's not about perfection. It's not about getting it right. It's about noticing for ourselves first where we default, especially under pressure. Where do I default? To a push or to a retreat? I find that, or in my looking back, I retreat. I'll just say, fine, fine, you do you then. Knowing that I've got more I can add or understand or create or ask about. But at some point, it doesn't seem to do any good. So I just go, fine, I'll take my toys and go home. That's been my tendency in my past. And so those results, I suppose, the results that that kind of energy brings may not be the most effective for whatever project we're working on. And if we can look at this, I'm kind of setting up Chris's and my new book, which is called Roots, which, by the way, I normally would call Roots because that's the way we say it in North Dakota. Yet, roots lead to fruits. So I've had to adjust the way I say that word. Roots are underground and they're what support the living plant that we're talking about, which produces the fruits, which are the products, services, whatever it is our organization, our business is providing to the world. How are we best serving the world? It's through the fruits. And the fruits will only be as effective or as healthy as the roots underground. And that's what our book is about. It's the human framework beneath thriving teams. That's the subtitle of our book. There will be more coming, but it's really close, you guys. It's really close. And what happens in healthy environments, we have both and. There are a lot of opportunities for both and energy, both and conversation, both and nourishment for the benefit of something that might never be seen in the light of day because the roots are beneath the surface. And the fruits will be a direct reflection of what is happening beneath the surface. How healthy are the roots? Let's look at the fruits. Products, services, the way people show up, the way the humans are encouraged and appreciated and recognized will have a direct effect on the way the fruit occurs in the world. So all of this to say, maybe this isn't about who's right, who's wrong, what's actually more evident, more obvious, more louder. Maybe it's about what's actually working. Working means to give us what we say we want in the vision we have for our organizations or our families or whatever. If we're honest about the outcome we really want, and we've done that work to articulate our vision for our organizations or our families or our communities, all of our relationships, then accountability becomes less about blame and more about ownership. Taking ownership of the thoughts, ideas, actions I've put into the world allows me to, I'm going to use an old analogy, but allows me to sweep my own doorstep, and the whole world then becomes cleaner. If we all do that, if we all tend our own roots, do what we can do in our own selves, we impact people around us without even realizing it. And instead of being a dinosaur with a tail that's wiping people out, maybe we become uh, like a sun that's encouraging people to shine and glow. I don't know. There's a lot of different analogies we can use. Maybe we just drop that one pebble in the pond and allow the ripples. And if we drop that pebble in the pond on purpose, with purpose, there's a much better chance that we will affect people in a positive way and not in the unconscious way we do when we're dinosauring our lives. A lot to think about today. Thanks for being here. As always, find a way this week to be real, radical, energized, authentic, learning focused. Take some action toward what you truly desire this week instead of only staying back and talking about what you don't like or what you don't think is working. Maybe just that one little step in the direction you do want to go might be all it takes this week. And then just notice where the ripples take you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Bruce, for being here. Great conversation. I appreciate you so much. Talk soon. Bye, everybody.